Welcome to Sober Solutions. We are a weekly recovery podcast not affiliated with any particular 12-step or recovery program. However, you may hear us mention them. My name is Jason, and I'm an alcoholic and addict.
My name is Chris, and I'm an alcoholic and addict.
My name is Ben. I'm an alcoholic and addict.
And welcome back to Sober Solutions Podcast. Tonight is episode 17, and tonight's topic is all around the summer. We are in the middle of July, and the summer is going by very fast. So, boys, what have you been up to so far this summer?
Well, it's been hot, which has been annoying because the humidity is gross, and I don't enjoy sweating this much. But no, I've had a good summer so far. I haven't been to the beach as much as I'd like, but been busy with work. And this is kind of one of the things that we hear about in recovery is it's life beyond your wildest dreams. And in the last episode, we touched on that a little bit, but these things hadn't happened. The last couple of days, I've interviewed for a couple of jobs, both are have a good possibility of coming through. But for me, it was really interesting just the way I carried myself with these professionals that I'm really a year ago, and I even said this to the one individual I interviewed with today. I said, a year ago, you and I aren't having this conversation because there's no way I would have been able to hold myself with a person of their stature. And so, yeah, it's professionally, it's been really good. And I'm finally getting to, tap into a bit of not just potential, but find a passion. And that's something that I never had professionally, which has kind of been lacking. And yeah, but no, I've made some time for some personal adventures. My girlfriend and I got away to Cooperstown, New York for the 4th of July, her birthday. And, I know tonight we're going to talk about, how we're dealing with the summer and, what that's like being sober. And, this vacation you couldn't have asked for a better sober vacation. She's also in recovery and sober. And we literally spent 3 days on the top of a hill in a cabin, this place called Fieldstone Farms. It's actually a place that my parents found back in the 90s, which, it's one of those things today, in today's day and age, anywhere with, you can find anything anywhere with GPS. How they found this place in 95 with a phone book and a map is beyond me. It's 4.5 hours away. It's not like, I ask them all the time, how the hell did you find it? And they don't know. So, but it was really, really interesting for me because it was also the first time that I've been able to experience moments and extended moments of total peace and serenity. Just sitting out on the porch and just kind of, looking out, through the hills, and up there's no light pollution. So when you're under the stars, you can't even see the constellations that you normally see, the Big Dipper and all that stuff. You can't see them because there are so many stars. And it really has just been, it was a really transformative experience for me because I need stimulation. I need a device. I need YouTube or Twitter or a baseball game. And I didn't need any of that. I was completely content, just her and I, and we did a puzzle. The only real entertainment we had, we watched fireworks on the TV, the little TV that they had. And even that, we watched it for a couple of minutes, and it was like, okay, we'd rather finish the puzzle and spend time reading and just talking. And we went on a hike up there, and it really was a tremendous, tremendous experience and something that I have definitely built on. But because, when we came back, life was still here waiting for us, all of the things that, that we left behind. It was, I made a conscious effort, anything that I had to do for the podcast, I tried to get out before we went. And yes, that we were able to put our lives on hold for 2 days, 3 days. But when we came back, everything was still moving at that pace. And it was, by the end of the week, it was interesting because I found myself already forgetting about that trip. And it really was such a special thing for me. And so it's I think if nothing else in my summer, it's been that trip and just kind of using it as an anchoring point for my highs and lows. Like that was a very great, that was a high for me. And coming down from it, it's again, it's about finding balance now, and so as high as that high was, the lows can be just that low. And so I'm just, trying to work balance into my everyday life, and yeah, that's been my summer so far.
Thank you for the insight that the summer is hot, by the way, in the beginning there. I as well, it's funny, we were
Water
sharing
is also wet.
we were sharing pictures of our hikes. I had a different type of hike recently. I climbed Mount Washington with my wife, and it's like, I don't know, 80 degrees at the bottom, and then there's 70-mile-per-hour winds and wind chill of, I don't even know, maybe like 30 up top. So and then there's this sign that says, "This is the most dangerous weather on Earth." Basically, many people have died beyond this point. So my wife loves that sign every time we go up there. But I agree with you. I mean, well, I just got back from a vacation, and the week before we left, it was just absolute craziness at work, and when I got back, it was craziness. But it is always nice. Mount Washington's always a nostalgic place for me. Went there a lot as a child, and I tried the best I could to kind of leave work at home and just be present. And it was a really great trip, and my family and I enjoyed it, and couldn't ask for a better high, like you said.
That's great. I'm glad that you guys are both having a great summer. It sounds like it's been quite serene, with hikes and nature and some quiet time away from social media and cell phones. Chris, I'm interested to hear a little bit on the difference that your experience was, going to Mount Washington probably before you got sober and having it, kind of in that lane of experience versus now. Was it more personal? Like, did you notice a difference?
Well, the first thing I would say is it was ironic because so my daughter the week before and son both got sick. We got the COVID tests, all that, and they didn't have COVID, thank God. I went up there and I was coughing up a storm. I had a really bad cough. My neighbor had it like 2 weeks, so it was just passing around, and I ended up giving it to my mother. But I could tell that my wife was a little uneasy at time that I was sick at one point, because in the past when I would go on vacations, um, the sickness was a little different. Obviously, it usually was withdrawal because God knows we can't plan, a week
Right.
vacation away. But it only lasted 2 days. She ended up testing me, which that calmed her down. But to answer your question, Jason, it was different. Mount Washington, I gotta say, I never really used up there just situationally and timing. But when I used to go on vacations, it was always, using, and it was part of it. It was like, oh, that to me would elevate the experience. And what it actually did was take away from the experience, because number one, I don't remember a lot of it. Number two, I wasn't present. And number three, halfway through the vacation, I would always get sick. It was amazing because even going on the hikes, I remember the conversations up the mountain with my wife, and we talked and we connected. We're doing these fondness and admiration things with our therapist, these exercises, and we actually connected while doing them. We actually scheduled a therapy session in Mount Washington just because we wanted to be consistent with it. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, Jason, it's night and day going on vacation when you're not using to when you're using.
I love how you said you threw in that bit about uh, therapy on vacation, because we also had a small therapy session while we were up there, and it's for me, it's nice to see that that is a part. It's becoming a part of not everyone's life, but there's nothing wrong with having a bit of therapy even on vacation. That's I think for me that's a sign that of at least growth for me. But it's you know you still go through emotions on vacation. You still go through experiences on vacation. So the idea that you would know how to handle them just because you're away from your real life responsibilities is, a completely it's a false narrative. But I wanted to just touch on what you were saying and what I was kind of I touched on it for a second. It was the nostalgia of going back to a place that you had been before. And I mentioned Cooperstown was a place I had gone um, a lot as a kid, and for me, that was that was a time in my life when I was truly happy, like genuine, just unadulterated happiness with my family, with my extended family, my cousins and aunt and uncle, who I consider might as well be my immediate family, and the memories that we created up there. That was something that was lost, and I couldn't and I never recreated in my own marriage or with my daughters. We've had memories, but I don't know if it's anything that they would remember. That would have the impact that those trips would have on me. So to go back to that place, you know, kind of coming out of the fog of addiction, I think for me it means so much more. It gave me a really, just a sense of appreciation for that, and so it's. But I mean, we've heard quite a bit about our hikes and our journeys this summer, and Jason, who looks like he's at the beach yet again. What has your summer consisted of?
Well, actually, I am home today for the first time in a few weeks, actually. But my summer's been awesome so far. My father lives down at the beach, and so I'm spending a lot of the summer down there, and it's a vacation town, and I have the opportunity to work during the day and then at night either go walk the dogs on the beach or go play pickleball, which we just learned. I'm not sure if you guys know what that is, but it's like a marriage between tennis
Oh
and
yeah,
racquetball.
I
oh
love
Uh,
yes.
pickleball,
Oh
dude.
my gosh, it is
Love it.
so much fun. And to your point about it being hot, you are sweating out there. Oh my God, like when you're playing singles, it is just crazy the amount of calories that you're burning out there. But the other thing is that I am, Chris, to your point, I am remembering things. Like I was thinking about this the other day how I would go to the beach, and I was dating someone at the time, and we were both drinkers. He not an alcoholic like I am, but I just remember being on the beach and like really making a fool of myself, because I was drunk, and just being not necessarily inappropriate towards other people, but inappropriate to the point of embarrassment of, just being sloppy, and not really remembering much of my time during the summer. And on top of that, having my addiction be in full swing at this point last time, or last this time last year. And I would be locked up in my house. I remember getting texts or talking to my father or my friends and them saying, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful outside." And I have all of the windows shut. I have all of the blinds drawn. I'm in the dark house and, just doing my drug of choice and just living in that. And now being out in the sunshine, which is so energizing and refueling for me. But on top of that, I have been going out and doing things. I've been going to barbecues. I signed up for a kickball league again. That's going to kick off in a couple weeks. I'm at the beach all the time. I'm going on vacations. I'm just enjoying myself, and it's a totally different experience. Being on the beach this time last year, I was 30 pounds lighter, but I was sickly looking, but I thought I looked hot. I didn't because I have the pictures to compare myself, but now I can go on the beach, and even though I'm not at where I want to be, I don't care, because I feel good about myself. I'm sober, And it's something that has just transformed for me.
It's interesting you talk about that. Yes, you were skinnier and maybe you physically might have looked, better by some metric, but there's a confidence in a genuinely sober individual, and there's an aura almost about them that you just, and I'll speak for myself, just the way I carry myself, it feels so much different, and I'm not second guessing my wardrobe choices, or perfect examples today. The job that I had was at my place of work, and it's a ruthless environment. There is no pulling punches, and I made the decision that I was going to wear my velvet, or maybe it's not velvet, velour, uh, caramel colored sport coat.
You have a velour sport coat?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
I'm just clarifying. Okay.
I think it's velour. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I'm pretty sure it's velour, but it's in the closet. I'll show you later. But it's look from a fashion perspective, with a navy pair of slacks and a purple checkered shirt. It was a great look. I looked at the mirror and said, "Damn, all right, I like it." And immediately I thought, "Damn, the guys are gonna rip me up for this one." And I said, "Who cares? I look good. I feel good. Whatever." And guess what? Nobody said shit about my coat. And that's just, just to be free of those little anxious moments is really just it's another blessing of sobriety that I don't think that I necessarily appreciate on a daily basis. But when I have a chance to reflect on it in times like these, it's nice to be able to reflect on it.
Ben, I applaud you for that. And it just goes to show how much is in our head, in our own head sometimes. Something that I did this last weekend is I went out to a club and I went dancing for the first time sober. And let me tell you, it was an experience. I wasn't. I checked in with myself. I made sure that I was in a good spot with my sobriety. I was actually going with two other sober people, and going to a club with a bunch of drunks running around the dance floor when you're just there to like have fun. I was walking in with this sense of like, oh man, am I going to look stupid dancing sober now, because I don't really think I've ever danced sober.
Right.
And actually being there and thinking nobody even knows that I'm here because they're all wasted.
Right.
So it was really an interesting experience.
That's great. I think we all, that is amazing, and I have had an amazing summer, and I know you guys have too. But it's not always as easy as I think we communicate, right? Like, I know for me, there's been a couple instances like barbecues, and even in Mount Washington, after I hike Mount Washington, I remember the best part about it, well, the old best part about it, was taking a shower and then having a drink on the veranda. So there's this beautiful veranda that overlooks it. And it's not that I did it and got drunk, but it was just part of the ritual. And part of what I'm working on now with my wife is changing all our rituals, so big and small. Um, I've been to a bunch of barbecues, a bunch of parties, and one thing I've noticed is I go to a lot of like 1 year old, 4 year old, 3 year old, young kid birthday parties. It's amazing how many drunk parents there are at these things.
Yep.
Like, it really is. I mean, even at parties that start at 11 a.m. And I'm always sober. My wife's always sober too, but it's amazing how the parents have no idea and definitely aren't present with their children at these parties. And just this whole summer, one thing I've noticed is, although sometimes, I look at it and I do get this sense of FOMA, but on the other end, I leave the party and I know that I was there for my children and had a good time with them. So, what are some things that I guess you guys struggle with, or are working through this summer with sober activities?
Yeah, I mean that story hits really close to home because I was never one of those noticeably drunk parents, but I was drunk at every single party for my daughters, pretty much. And again, I a staple of my addiction was making sure that I was not an embarrassment. You know, I went to great pains to make sure that I never did anything that would reflect poorly on myself or, you know, my family. And but I knew the truth. And so for me, looking back at a lot of pictures of my daughter's birthdays, my oldest is born in August, and so her birthday was always a pool party at the house that I used to live in, that they still live in, and it was there were pictures of I remember taking the picture and thinking, man, you're pretty drunk right here. And so now when I see those pictures, it's really disappointing because I don't remember my daughter, you know, going two hands into a cake. You know, I don't remember those things. And it's it's hard to not beat myself up over it. At the same time, I shouldn't say that. There is some regret and some remorse, but it's those things that I take now, and I make sure that's one little extra piece of motivation to stay sober so that I don't miss out on those things. And like you said, to be present for our kids now is just something that I never appreciated at all. And it can be super small stuff. We go on a lot of hikes, and they love it. They love it. My youngest has a collection of walking sticks that she's always got to have her walking stick. My oldest has her own backpack that she's got to have her backpack with the snacks in it. And if we bring the dog, then you know some dog toys in it, and just experiencing, genuinely enjoying the entire thing, not trying to rush through the hike to get done with the hike so I could get back to what I was doing before, even if it wasn't drinking. Just to not be so consumed with myself is just been a really great thing. But again, it is one of the things we talk, you know, you got Chris asked us about what do we struggle with. You know, there are just still so many things of my personality that still exist. I give you a little idea of that. You know, it's been an interesting time with my girlfriend in terms of our communication, because you know, coming out of a marriage where I did not communicate whatsoever, I've made great attempts to try to communicate, and I'm still finding that my methods of communicating are not as effective as I would like, and to the point where, you know, my girlfriend wrote a note just kind of getting all her feelings out on paper, and when I read it, it literally could have been written by my ex-wife, and it was such a like the substance of it was really kind of like, I'm not even going to defend myself in any of these things because these are all things that she could have said, that my ex-wife could have said. And it was just like, holy crap, you're still that guy. And I didn't know it. I'm not trying to be that guy. In fact, I'm trying to be the opposite of that guy. And I'm still not being as effective as I would like. And I'm still not, you know, causing my loved ones, I don't want to say pain, but I'm still putting them through some sort of turmoil. And so for me, like that's one of the things that just the behaviors I find will never leave. You know, they just won't leave, whether it's that or whether it's when we were working on the puzzle up in Cooperstown, and I literally just it was perfect. And I literally thought, man, a beer would be nice. And I got into a funk for about 2 hours because I was pretty pissed, because I was like, are you kidding? Like this is what you need? You need your brain thinks you need a beer to make this a better experience. You've already said a billion times that this experience was, you know, hands down one of the best vacations you've ever had. In what way could alcohol improve this experience? And so it was just an interesting time for me to kind of realize that this thing is insidious. It does not leave. No days off in the gym. Addiction takes no days off, and it can hit you at any time. And as we've talked about before, I wasn't in control of that first thought. And my second thought wasn't even the best one because I sent myself into a little bit of a funk and just a little bit of a pity party. But the third thought and the fourth thought were pulling myself out of that and making that and sharing it with other people and making it a learning experience for myself. So yeah, it's in short, those are some of the things that I'm struggling with this summer.
It's interesting you say that, Ben. I found myself having those thoughts too. Walking down the street in a beach town, seeing a certain sign or smelling a certain smell, and thinking to myself, man, this type of beer would pair really well with this experience right now. The thing is, though, is that it didn't become a craving, because the whole process of craving and obsession has really truly been lifted for me. And I'm not beating myself up for it. We're alcoholics. We're drug addicts. We're going to think about alcohol and drugs. That's who we are. And I love that took you took the right action, right? You did not do it. You did something else. And then you started thinking of other things of how to pull yourself out of that funk. And I tell my sponsees this all the time. If you don't think about drugs and alcohol when you're a drug addict and an alcoholic, there's something wrong with you. They're natural thoughts. They're natural thoughts. So don't beat yourself up for it. It's when they become that obsession. I had a sponsee earlier on in his sobriety, before he finished his steps, where he was at dinner and there were a bunch of margaritas around, and he just fixated on the margarita and was explicitly describing every single bit of it. And I said, now that is the obsession talking. That's your disease trying to get you back into the game. But now he has a thought and he lets it go, because that's what happens sometimes. Chris, I want to touch a little bit about FOMO when you were kind of talking about that. That fear of missing out has been something that I think I've been actively trying to avoid this summer. So I am sometimes overbooking myself a little bit to, be at parties, be at barbecues, be at the beach, go on different things and be different places. But it's naturally been happening because I've built such a strong fellowship and a strong community of people that when a bunch of sober people get together, they actually show up, and they actually do things instead of just being stuck in a bar for a couple hours or whatever we used to do. So that's been really fun, and just to see some of the people in my life struggling. Um, Fortunately, this summer has not been difficult for me. But I am seeing a lot of people around me struggle with this summer. Coming out of the pandemic, getting back into society, things starting to show up. Like you were saying, I hear them say it's that FOMO, it's that fear of missing out, and just not being able to get back into a rhythm of sobriety. And it's hard because I'm setting up these boundaries in my life where I will not let them get anywhere close to impacting my own sobriety. So I'm starting to put boundaries up around people that I was previously hanging out with and texting on a regular basis. And I'm not doing that anymore because I won't let them get that close to my sobriety. I'm what, 2 weeks, 15, 16, less than 15
13 days.
days, 13 days.
12 days for you.
Thanks. Thanks, Ben. I'm not that great at math. And 12 days from my year. Ben, you're 13 days. There's no chance I'm going to let someone get close to ruining that. And I know that if I let those thoughts and if I let, and it's not like they're doing it maliciously, but that's how my disease acts. They see someone else, my disease sees someone else doing it and wants to do it too. And I am not going to let that happen. This is the most amount of sobriety that I've ever had. And my life has become so great over the last year. There's not a chance that I'm gonna let that get ruined.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost at 8 months, I think it is. And that's why I'm building these new experiences. And that's why, we're building these new rituals because I want to reference these new rituals in the future and not my old rituals. I mean, just in the next month, I'm going to the Van Gogh experience, which is like a immersive experience. Like I said, I went to Mount Washington. We're going to the Crayola Factory. I'm almost overbooking myself because I don't even have time to, do this housework that I want. We're going to Disney. I signed my daughter up for swim class. But kind of like you said, we're overbooking ourselves, but it doesn't seem overwhelming because we're able to be present and, we're just there. We're experiencing it. It's not overwhelming. Like Ben, you were saying, I'm not trying to rush home just to do whatever selfish activity that I was trying to do. So I think it's a lot easier. It is a lot easier now that we're sober and clean.
Yeah, and I mean, you say that doing all those things aren't overwhelming, and yeah, they're not overwhelming when we're not also trying to manage addiction. That literally was a full-time job for me, and Jason, what you guys have been talking about, this FOMO, and for me, I've experienced it in relations to baseball games, and one positive and one not negative, but so my daughters met my girlfriend for the first time last week. Yeah, I think this was last week, and my ex-wife had met her, and we went to a minor league baseball game, and it was a big deal because it was my daughters meeting the first significant other of their parents that wasn't their parent, and it wasn't until like a day or two later that I realized I didn't think about alcohol at all. I didn't, and that was something that I always would do. I did it at my brother's wedding, looking at what this person's drinking. I didn't, not when we were at the concession stand, not when we were sitting in the seats, at no point did I look, did the alcohol ever enter my mind, and did I, look and say, man, it'd be nice to enjoy a beer, because there was literally nothing better than that. The four of them, getting along, we had a great time, and the girls really enjoyed it, and so to be completely present in that moment was a tremendous thing. And I didn't experience the FOMO there, but I haven't experienced the FOMO yet because it's something that hasn't happened. But I'm going to I'm taking my girlfriend to a Met game in August. And one of the ways I would always go to the Met game was the NJ Transit to Penn Station, and then the LIRR to Citi Field. And I thought to myself, should I get the parking pass, or should we just take the trains in? And I said parking pass, because with the trains, it was a ritual. Get to Penn Station, 2 beers in a bag, pound one first, then you have the second for the train because nobody cares about them on the LIRR. So you were at least 2 pounders deep by the time you got to the stadium. And I literally organized my travel plan around making sure that I wasn't going to be on those trains. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I look at it as it's also not the most expedient way for us to get to and from the ballpark. And that really is more of a motivating factor than being exposed to alcohol, because I've and my sponsors made it quite clear that we shouldn't be hiding ourselves, or I shouldn't be hiding myself from it. But it was something that entered my mind as one of the reasons why I didn't want to take NJ Transit and the LIRR. I mean, I don't even mind the it was funny. I used to really enjoy the smell of Penn Station, which is a really weird thing to say, because Penn Station is a horrendous smell. But I knew that the smell of Penn Station meant that I was just a couple of minutes away from from Pounders in a Brown Bag. Whether I was going to a Billy Joel concert or a Met game, I knew that stepping off that train and being in the big city, I was that close to alcohol that it was, hey, we're in New York, it's an experience. I could drink unadulterated and not feel shame or guilt or remorse. And I haven't been back since. I haven't been to Penn Station since I've been in sobriety. But I have a feeling that I'm not going to enjoy the scents quite as much, especially if I go in the summertime, which I'm gonna avoid that. But I have a feeling I'm not going to enjoy it as much this time around. But hopefully, for whatever reason I'm there, I'm able to stay present for that and not the thought of beers in a brown bag.
Yeah, Penn Station's not the best smell. In fact, recently there was like 4 or 5 feet of water in the subway, and people were wading through just this fermented, gross water to get on and off the train. Which I don't know, if you see 4 feet of water, how do you actually then continue down into the subway?
New Yorkers have determination.
I know, I know. So when we actually talked about this episode about summer sobriety, my thought was we were going to really talk about, I guess, ways to protect our sobriety during summertime activities. So, Jason, you said not that you have had an easy summer, but that you've been doing well this summer. So what are some ways that you've been protecting your sobriety at these events?
That's a great question. The first thing I'll say is to go back to Ben's comment is I don't hide from events with alcohol. I don't try and run away from it. For one reason is that it's everywhere. Just like you said, if it's at a 2-year-old's birthday party, it's going to be at the beach, so there's not a way for me to never be around it. I mean, even with TV, social media, radio stations, it's always around us. So I completely agree with Ben that there's no way that we can run from it. So with that in mind, and first I had to accept that. I had to say that I'm not going to be able to get away from this. So then my next step is, how do I deal with it when it shows up? The first thing I do is always check in with where my sobriety's at in that day, in that hour. And I told the guys that I was with at the beach, one, if I feel any type of way, if I feel squirrely, if I don't feel like, I can go out to this club tonight, I'm not doing it.
So real quick, for the listeners, how do you check in? I want just to try to expand on that.
Yeah, sure. Sure. So what I do is I just ask myself, did I do everything that I possibly could to live this, to work the steps for myself up to this point in my day? Am I feeling hungry? Am I angry? Am I harboring any resentments? Am I tired? Because tiredness really messes with my emotional state. And if my emotional state is off, then I'm that much closer to a drink if it's put in front of me. Am I pissed off at somebody or something? Because for me, resentment's another big thing. Am I going to this place, and we'll just say it was this club, right? It was this club this weekend. Am I going to this club for the right reasons? Am I going because I want to taste a little bit of that crazy alcoholic night? Or am I going because I want to go have fun and I want to see people I haven't seen in a year and a half and I want to dance? I had to check my motives, and that's me checking in. Really, if I should be there or not. And only I can say that. And it's easy for me to lie to myself, but I have to go back to am willing to do whatever it takes to stay sober. So if I check in with myself, and even if I'm off a little bit, it's not worth going to a bar, going to a club, going to a wedding, going to a party, going to a barbecue. It's not worth it if I'm going to get fucked up. So I always check my motives to see how I'm feeling in that moment.
Sometimes that I love that you said that, because sometimes it's about saying no to things that we would not have said no to before, and it's about saying no to people that we, for me, maybe you would hurt their feelings, or you feel like you're going to hurt their feelings. If I told this person I was going to go to this club with them, and being honest with yourself and saying, you know what, I'm that acronym, HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. It's am I any of those things? Because it's those, when those things are off, that puts, like you said, me in an emotional state of danger.
I have to be selfish in my sobriety.
Yep.
So to your point, I'm not caring for a little bit if people get upset with me, if I'm not coming to their party, if I'm not going to their barbecue or their wedding or the class reunion or whatever it is. I'd rather deal with that on the other end,
Right.
sober, than have to deal with a relapse.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely selfish in our own sobriety, because for me, if my recovery doesn't come first, everything else isn't going to come at all. But to Chris's question, what are we doing to kind of protect ourselves? I'll be honest. This podcast is help. It helps me because we were talking before we started recording that tonight felt like a night that dude, well, I wish I could have just stayed on the couch. But anytime that's happened, and it's happened, we got 17 episodes. It's happened a couple of times. I've always walked away after we're done recording feeling better, because this is an hour and a half, 2 hours of us just connecting, sharing our experience, strength, and hope with each other. And then if it gets out to the masses, great. But for this period of time, this is the four of us reconnecting. And when we talk about our the scheduling and the editing and the posts and all this stuff, those are little tiny bits of responsibility that I have to you guys, to the project that we embarked on, and ultimately to myself, because this is something that helps my sobriety. So yeah, it's there's a lot of ways that we can protect ourselves, and I think it's important that even if we don't recognize it at the time, we're not I don't come into this podcast thinking, here's my way to protect myself. It's just a thing that does help me.
Yeah, I agree. Lately, I've noticed, I remember Victor saying, he's the biggest people pleaser, and I see that in myself a lot too. It's very hard for me to say no to events and, going to this, going to that, going to checking in with this friend, and my mom even says it all the time. She's like, "Do you guys ever stop?" And I remember last week I told my wife, I was like, we're going to Long Island for a third weekend. I was like, I might have to just not do that. And initially her reaction was, a little upset. You're not coming to my friend's house. But I just need to sometimes, like you said, be a little selfish when I feel myself just getting overwhelmed. And work right now is very overwhelming. I shouldn't even say overwhelming. It's busy, it's exciting, but it's a lot. It's a lot different than last year, I'll say, because this year I care. But, like you said, Jason, I have to check my daily emotions. And that's something that I'm currently working on, is checking in with myself. Am I feeling, like you said, overwhelmed, angry, too happy? What are my motives for going to this or that? Is it an ego thing? And, that's just a daily growth process that we're all going through.
Yeah, too happy is another one. It's not just when it's not when the weight of the world's on our shoulders that we turn to recovery to find balance. For me, that and I've said this from the beginning, whether or not I've practiced it as much as I've talked about it is a completely different story. But when I am riding those highs, it's I don't want to bring myself down from them. I just have to recognize that this is a temporary thing. This feeling of elation will not last, whatever it is, and at some point something will bring it down. And so it's not waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it's just being cognizant that if the other shoe does drop, I'm going to be okay, and whatever it is, I don't have to drink over it.
It's interesting you both comment on that, because I remember early on, I think it was right after Memorial Day, I had these plans to go do something, and I forget what exactly it was, but I got this shot of adrenaline in my mouth, and I could taste the adrenaline in my mouth. And it reminded me of when I was about to go score some drugs, where I was on my way to my dealer's house and I would taste the adrenaline in my mouth. And that made me check myself real quick. I think I was either going to the beach or I was going out to dinner. Something happened and I had to call my sponsor. And it was because I was so excited to do this that I had the same experience of when I was going to meet my dealer. And I think it's so true that it's not just about the quote unquote negative emotions, but I think it all boils down to that honesty of checking in with oneself. Well, boys, I think that we're off to a great start this summer. I hope that it continues. The adventures, day by day, week by week. Really fun episode tonight. And as always, this episode is dedicated to the still sick and suffering alcoholic and addict, especially the individual who's going to pick up for the first time tonight. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.
Have a good one.
We appreciate your liking and subscribing to our podcast. If you liked what you heard today and would like to support our podcast, feel free to Venmo $1 to our virtual basket at Sober Solutions Podcast. We want to hear from you too. If you have a comment, question, topic, or would like to come on the show, find us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Sober Solutions Podcast. Or you can shoot us an email to sobersolutionspodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And if you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show.